want your comments on relay. Silence on my page, oh yeah, oh my god, you changed. Young life, I can't see back on my, I just need some breeze, so I could keep myself in order.
Before I get into the story, I just want to say, I know you guys are looking at the title crazy, but this story entails the full detail, the trauma that I endured from the molestation and sexual assault, the rape that happened to me. And I finally want to eulogize that part of her. And even though that I'm still alive, people fail to realize once you encounter trauma, a part of you dies. And that little girl deserves that. She deserves the full story of what happened to her to be told. So I'm going to be talking about myself in third person, so you can get the gist. So pretend or close your eyes and just listen with an open mind and an open heart. Okay. He got problems, she got problems. Only I got 411 problems. Hey, hi, what's up, y'all? It's time for another story time. And this story time is of the true crime story of the death of Angel Riggins. Angel was different, eclectic, a tomboy. She was confident, extremely confident. She knew that from jump. She knew that by the age of 3. Unfortunately, she knew that by the age of 3 because she was protecting her mother from her father, who was extremely upset that her mother got out of the bed to get her a glass of water because he was extremely abusive. So every move that her mother made, he felt like he could control. Angel became first aware of how confident and bold and brazen that she was when she stood in front of her mother's face to stop her father from punching her over a glass of water, and even had the audacity to say, "Hit her again." Now mind you, she's 3 3, but bold enough to stand up to her abusive father to protect her mother. And no, it wasn't a dream. Years later, it was confirmed by sitting at the table with her mother with a new boyfriend, when the new boyfriend was telling her how she should respect this abusive, non-participating sperm donor that wasn't a part of her life. She should respect him. And she told the story of standing in front of her mother as a 3-year-old to protect her from the abusive, non-existent father's fists. And telling the story, she got confirmation that it wasn't a dream and that she remembered at 3 years old by the gasp of her mother. After that, Angel became, I wouldn't say stubborn, but very, very adamant about protecting her mother. She loved her mom more than anything and would do anything and everything for her. Her mom ended up getting married after she divorced her father, of course. She couldn't take the abuse anymore. And even still, Angel was willing to forgive her father because she would use her father against her mother by constantly berating her mother, saying that her father was better for whatever reason. I don't know. But she constantly berated her mother until her father finally showed up, picked her up, and left her stranded on her aunt's front porch for a whole day. Luckily, her Uncle Wash knew something even before his passing, because he had his Doberman pincher, Stephanie, smelled every part of Angel and ordered the Doberman pincher to protect her. So guess who was sitting by Angel? A 4-year-old sitting on the front porch in the hot sun for 8 hours alone. Stephanie, the Doberman pincher. And to her aunt's amazement, she walked in her front gate and stopped dead in her tracks because a 4-year-old was sitting waiting at her doorstep who wasn't supposed to be there. The whole time, her mother thought she was with her father. So after that incident, she wasn't allowed to go with her father anymore, and Angel never berated her mother with her father again. So around the 4-year-old, end of the 4-year-old, beginning of the 5-year-old year, her mother is dating and she falls in love. She falls in love with this man named Dennis. Now, mind you, Angel doesn't remember the dating, the courting, none of that. But she remembers the wedding. And she remembers that the wedding was extremely bare. Meaning, nobody was there, really. She remembers her mom, Dennis, the preacher, herself. Not her grandmother, not her grandfather, not her sister, not her brother. Nobody but the preacher, her mom, Dennis, and herself. Which was in the living room of her mother's house, actually. She also remembers her brother coming in after the marriage and clapping very slowly. Like, she took a mental note of that, but didn't understand why. She didn't understand why none of her family was around, why none of her family was there. But she would later find out that they knew more than what she did. But of course, she was a child, so she had no clue. She was excited because this man showed attention to her. He would take her to the store, he would spoil her, he would ride her around, he would parade her around as his daughter. He was very proud of her, not realizing she was in danger. This one particular day, Angel was riding bicycles and hanging out with her cousins as they normally do, during those times. There wasn't screen time as much. It was riding bicycles, creating games, basketballs, softball. They were outside, and outside didn't mean hookah, it didn't mean clubs, it didn't mean drinking, it mean actually being outside and enjoying the sun, creating games, cooking mud pies, riding bicycles, going on the trails, just outside activities. The way that you would know where everybody was, you had to follow the bikes. At this time, Angel is around 7. And she starts developing breasts at 7. She's in a tank top, and lo and behold, Dennis and Angel's cousin, who was freshly married into the family, is standing outside in the driveway talking. Angel rides up on her bicycle that she got for Christmas and rides by, and she's waiting on one of her cousins who went next door because his grandmother stayed next door. She's waiting for him to come back out because he went in to go get something to drink. And while she's waiting, she noticed that the cousin that was just recently married in the family and Dennis is staring at her. And all of a sudden, Dennis' tone and attitude changed and said, "Get in the house now." She looked at him. She's like, "Why? I'm not done riding bicycles. Like, I'm waiting for my cousin. And we're going to finish riding." Before she could finish her sentence, he says, "Get in the house now." So, of course, Angel is upset because she doesn't understand why all of a sudden she's in trouble and she has to go into the house. And it's not a school night. So she wanted to continue riding bicycles. She goes into the house. Her mother is sitting at the table in the kitchen. And she sits at the table with her mother and she's crying and she's upset. Because she doesn't understand why she can't ride bicycles anymore. So her mother is like, "Girl, what's wrong?" And so she was like, "I don't know. I was just told to come into the house. I was standing there on my bicycle. Have no clue what's going on. He just told me to come into the house." Dennis comes into the house and he comes to the kitchen table. Her mother was sitting at the head of the table, like here. This is the table. Her mother was sitting at the head of the table here. Angel was sitting on this side, so Dennis decides to sit on this side beside her. He sits on the side beside her, and her mother says, "What's going on? Why she can't ride bicycles anymore? What did she do?" And so he says, "Well, apparently the newlywed is not seeing enough titties." And she said, "What?" Angel is oblivious to have no clue what this man is talking about. He said, "Well, no, apparently he's not seeing enough titty because her shirt," and at the time Angel had on a tank top, "was like this." And so you could see that her breasts were starting to come in. And he about broke his neck looking at her little old titties. "You need to go and get her a training bra." And so her mother was like, "I don't understand, what's the big deal?" And he said, "Like this," rubbing Angel's breast. Her mother says, "All right, fine. I'll go get her a training bra." He also makes the statements before he leaves the table that you need to keep her away from those boys anyway, because you don't want her to turn out fast. Now, mind you, Angel has heard this before, but it was from a woman. Angel has never been a skinny, small per se. She's always had like a shape, a curvage type. She's always been a kind of thick young girl. So when she heard the fast term before, she thought it was being referred to running because she could outrun all the boys in the neighborhood, which was something that she loved to brag about. She loved being the fastest, or one of the fastest. Running, that is. But when the lady told her mother, you need to watch her, she got a cute little shape, so she'll probably be fast. She had no idea that the lady wasn't talking about running. So, Angel's mom get her a training bra. As of right now, all is well with the world. Angel is starting to develop a lot more and quicker than the other girls around her. And it's making her uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. To the point where it's something that she's being teased about, especially her butt size. She remembers one particular boy in the 3rd grade humiliating her about the size of her butt in 3rd grade. As Angel continued to get older, around 9, here comes a menstrual cycle. Seems like Angel can't win for losing. And at this time, her mother has no clue what has already started. Angel was home alone with Dennis one day. And he had called her upstairs. She came upstairs and he told her to get him something to drink. And she was confused because her room was downstairs. He was already upstairs where the kitchen was. And it really didn't make any sense to come away from downstairs to come upstairs to get you a drink that you are right next to the kitchen. But of course, we are told to respect our elders, and you have to do what they say. She came upstairs, she got him a drink, and she goes to hand it to him. He doesn't take the drink. He tells her to sit down next to him. So she's holding a drink, and she's sitting there. And while she's sitting there, she doesn't even know why she's still there. Because here's your drink. He finally takes the drink and he puts it on the floor next to his foot. She goes to get up to leave, and he says, I didn't tell you to go anywhere. She sits back down. He then proceeds to lift up her shirt. And once he lifts up her shirt, he starts sucking on her breast. At this very moment, Angel doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to respond. She's just sitting there, stunned. After he finished, he says, don't tell anybody. But also, don't let nobody else do this to you either. You understand? Angel gets up, walks back to her room, and tries to make sense of what just happened. Now, mind you, at this very moment, she doesn't know if she should tell her mom. She doesn't know if she should tell anybody, because she has no clue on what just happened, why it happened. She's in shock. She's in shock. Angel doesn't say anything. She goes on about her day, goes on about her life. As weeks pass, it goes from breast sucking to his fingers playing in her vagina. At one point, he had touched her so much that she smelled like his job that she had never been to. And it got to the point where her mom was like, girl, why do you shower so much? Why are you taking so many showers? What's in this bathroom? And I'm like, I just don't feel clean. This one particular day, there's an after school special on television, and the young girl is being abused sexually by her stepfather. And her friend, who she confided in, said, you need to tell your mom because none of this is right. So Angel is washing dishes and she's hearing the after school special. Crazy part is, Dennis was watching the after school special as well. So he comes in the kitchen and he says, have you told anybody? Have you said anything? You know I'm not doing this, to hurt you. Right? So there's this gut feeling that's like, you need to say something. You need to say something. So she finally gets the nerve to tell her mother. And when she tells her mother said, don't leave. Don't say anything. Keep this to yourself. I'll be back. She tells him to get into the car. They leave. Angel is hysterical. She feels somewhat relief, but she also is afraid because did she just hurt her mother's feelings? Did she just kill her mother's marriage? Is this her fault? Her sister is on the phone downstairs, and she noticed that Angel is hysterical, and she's like, what's going on? What's going on? Angel tells her sister. Her sister is livid, hysterical as well. She hangs up with her friend, and they both go to their grandparents' house. Go to their grandparents' house and told their grandparents what happened and what's going on. The phone rings 20 minutes later, and you can hear Angel's mother livid, yelling and telling the children to return home. They go home. Her sister is sent downstairs. Angel is sent to her mother's room, and there is Dennis as well. He's standing by the door, staring Angel down. Angel's sitting in a chair, and her mother is sitting on the bed, and she said, "Well, Dennis said the things that he was doing to you was to show you what not to let boys do to you. So can you live with him?" She looked at her mother. She looked at Dennis. She looked at her mother. She looked at Dennis. And Dennis says, "I told you I was sorry. And it won't happen again." She looked at her mother. Said, "Whatever makes you happy." She's like, "Okay." The very next day, Angel was home alone with Dennis. Angel didn't even want to get off the bus. And nobody at school knew what was going on. And after that particular day, Angel felt like she had to protect herself. The very next day after school, she's home by herself with Dennis, and he sits in the chair in the living room. It's a single chair, and Angel has to do chores, which was one of the things that he used to keep her in the house. She is vacuuming. He pulls the plug out of the socket, sits in the single chair, and says, "Come here, sit on my lap." Angel stands there for a minute, and he says, "Didn't you hear me?" She sits on his lap. She's shaking. And he says, "I told you not to tell anyone. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." But now I can't trust you. Weeks go by, and so far Angel's in the clear because the sucking on her breast and the playing in her vagina has stopped. But her treatment of how he talks to her, her chores, are now extremely mean. He lies, he manipulates, and he's driving a wedge between Angel and her mother. So, Angel is now in this house, marked, and now fighting for her life, basically. The next thing that would come into play would be the mental abuse. It would be certain things that would be commenting on her weight, commenting on her body, commenting on how she was shaped, commenting on knowing when her menstrual was by watching her washcloth. By saying, "I'm making sure you're not having sex and making sure you're not pregnant. Your period came on. I can tell by your washcloth. Because we all shared the same bathroom." So now she's not being sexually abused at this time. She's being mentally abused. And if she stayed to herself and if she stayed in her room, he would tell her mother, "She has this attitude problem. She's just being nasty. She's not being around me and I feel uncomfortable." So she would get in trouble for that. She would get labeled for that. And so she had to pretend that she liked this man, and she would have to go and sit upstairs and watch TV, which made her a target. Can you imagine waking up Saturday morning, getting your cereal, getting ready to watch cartoons? And if you're home by yourself while you're sitting there watching TV, the man that your mom married comes and feels on your breast and suck on your breast while you watch cartoons. So after Angel told her mom about the first time, because it was multiple incidents, she told her mother the first time. After a couple of weeks, the mental abuse kicked in. After the mental abuse, he then finally get the nerve to start the sexual abuse again. This particular time, he is laying in the bed and she's being forced to lay in the bed with him because he can't sleep without somebody laying next to him. Angel's mother worked 12s now, so she's home most of the time alone with this dude. Her siblings are older, so they have their own life, to be honest. Matter of fact, I think they were already out the house by the time this round of abuse kicked in. She had to lay in the bed next to him while he slept. And at one particular point, when she thought he was so deep in a sleep, she tried to sneak away, and that was not allowed. So he would take his leg, put her legs in between his, and clamp down. This man is 6'2", 6'3", 250, 260. So literally, she's like this. His top leg is over her legs, his bottom leg. And she has to lay there while he sleeps, or pretend to sleep. Then his hands get to moving, and then he starts sucking on her breast again and playing in her vagina. This goes on for months, and she finally gets the nerve to write her mother a letter and says, "This is happening again. I am now being forced to take naps. Please tell him to stop." When she wrote the letter, about an hour later, he comes downstairs with the letter in his hand and says, "I told you to keep our stuff to yourself. But I told your mother that I was sorry and it won't happen again." So Angel now knows that the abuse is going to increase. And after this time, she told herself that she wasn't going to tell her mother anything anymore because nothing is being done. Angel's first experience of oral sex was given to her by her stepfather. And at this point, he's starting to contemplate whether he wants to penetrate. Because while he's giving her oral sex, he's playing with himself. It has gotten to the point where he has to figure out a way of where he can penetrate her. So he introduced her to alcohol. And by introducing her to alcohol, he also went, at this time, there's VHS, there's no DVDs in sight, there's no streaming, it's VHS. And he goes to the VHS store and get a porn. And he gets alcohol. And he has Angel sit and watch the porn with him, along with the alcohol. Tell her to keep drinking. She only wants one. And he kept asking while watching the porn, is that doing something to you? Is that doing something to you? Is that doing something to you? She keeps saying no. The porn finishes. She asks to go outside. He states she's not allowed. She goes to her room. He comes downstairs. He comes to the door. And he says, it didn't do anything to you. Are you having sex? No. I'm fine. Luckily for Angel, it never got to the point of penetration, but mentally, she was already a goner because of all of the other things that this man has done. She had died mentally multiple times over and over because of those sexual acts that was committed by her stepfather. The one thing that he was finally put out about was a $50 check that was written off a water account that wasn't her mother's. She was finally free because he was finally out of the house. Her mother was finally tired. Not realizing that everything that he had done would follow her for the rest of her life. From the judgment of her body, because she even got remarks from women. One woman on the bus to school had made a comment about her breast and said, girl, you better stop letting them little boys suck on them big old things. And the whole time it was her stepfather sucking on her breasts. She couldn't fit kids' clothes because her backside and her thighs were huge. He's finally gone. Angel feels like she's in the clear. And lo and behold, her mom starts dating again. And she couldn't deal with everything that had come into play. Because literally the $50 was stolen because he was a crack addict. You were a drug addict. And you would steal things out of the house to go get drugs. Which is why Angel used to always get tested frequently. Her mom starts dating and she, wants to move on, wants to move forward. And she meets this man at the truck stop who's a truck driver. The truck driver, when he first walked through the doors, Angel could sense that something wasn't right. The truck driver came around, he flashed his money, he flashed his cars, but Angel wasn't falling for it because she had already been traumatized. She asked him, "What are you really here for?" And it made her mother livid. So she was labeled that she had an attitude problem. But she was cool with that because she had already decided that she needed to protect herself. So they've been dating a while, and he, on her off days, would say, "Meet me at this exit." And she would leave and say, I'm going to meet Harold at this exit. I'll be back. Okay. She would leave. It would be an hour. And the next thing you hear is a knock on Angel's window. Angel's a little confused because it's like her mother has the key, so why would she knock on the window? But Angel's room is completely dark because she has school. So she doesn't move because nobody should be knocking on her window. Once the knocking finally stops, because Angel has now come into play with knowing how to play the game. She looks outside and it's Harold's car. "30 minutes to an hour later, her mother calls, and Angel answers. Luckily, Angel has her own line because Harold was calling the main line, the house phone. Angel's mother called her line and says, "Is Harold there?" "Yep, he's sitting outside." "Don't open the door." "I'm not." He did that quite often. And she kept saying, "I don't understand." And I'm going, "Baby." And Angel's going, "Baby, why you don't?" "Because I do. And I don't like him." Well, lo and behold, Angel had no clue that her mother was confiding into Harold about the things that Angel had been through. So now, Angel's a target. Again. Again, her mother works 12s. So this particular day, her mother is working overnight. And she comes to Angel and she says, "Hey, are you comfortable with Harold spending the night while I go to work?" And Angel says no. And her mother cussed her out. She even called her sister and said, "Everybody is not like Dennis. Why does she even think she's that pretty?" And while she's on the phone, venting and confiding into her sister about the situation, because I said no, that I wasn't comfortable with her new boyfriend spending the night while she's not there, while she's at work, he comes downstairs and says, "Since you're calling me a rapist, I might as well be one." From that night, Angel started sleeping with a knife under her pillow, or her doors were locked to her room. Or she couldn't lock her door because he would tell her mother, "She's making me uncomfortable by locking her room door. She's making me uncomfortable because she thinks that I'm going to do something to her." So Angel would get in trouble if her door was locked before her mama left to go to work. So the particular night where her door was open, even though there was a knife under her pillow, he would come downstairs, slide his hand from her ankle up over her butt, on her back, and lean down and whisper in her ear and say, "Turn over." And when Angel turned over, she had a knife to his throat. He backed away out of the room and didn't come back. At this time, Angel was very into sports. She was into sports. She could run track. She was a pretty good basketball player. And her mother was still, at the time, working 2 to 3 jobs because she was in debt because of the crack addict that she had divorced previous. So she had to get herself out of debt. So it kind of made a conflict of her work schedules and getting Angel from practice. So a lot of times Angel would be the very last one that left at the school, and it was embarrassing to Angel. So at this point she was like, you know what, you need a car, because I can't keep trying to leave work or trying to find somebody to come get you from practice. At one point it was so bad, one year Angel sat out completely from basketball. This one particular night, Angel comes home from her friends, and her godmother had bought this polo. The dress looked like a polo shirt, but it was a dress. It was very popular at the time. So it was black and white. It was very cute. Angel wasn't dressing, especially with the trauma from Dennis. She wasn't dressing. She would dress with very baggy clothes. She didn't want anybody to look at her body. She didn't want to be touched, nothing. She felt like it was her fault. She felt like her body drew the attention. So she would wear very baggy clothes. Once Dennis was gone completely, she started trying to come into her own and wearing like dresses and things, right? Her godmother brought the dress. She wore the dress to school, and the school was shocked, of course, because she was a tomboy. So her friends drop her off. It's late in the afternoon, and her mom's not home. But Harold's there. So Angel walks in, and of course, the way that she was raised, you have to speak. She spoke and started to go down to her room, and Harold says, "Come here." Angel stops dead in her tracks. She's standing on the stairs for a good little minute because she's dreading walking upstairs, because there hasn't been really that much interaction after the knife incident. She knows if she doesn't go upstairs that he's going to say something to her mother, and it's going to be a whole different situation. So to try to keep the peace, try to pick her battles, Angel walks upstairs. She walks upstairs, and he's sitting on the 2-seater. The love seat is what it was called. He's sitting on the love seat. She's standing there. She says yes. And so he says, "Yeah, come closer. Let me see your dress. You look cute. You look pretty. Come here." She inches up a little bit more, but not too much. He says, "Turn around. Let me see your whole dress." She stands there for a good little minute. But then again, she knows, again, if she doesn't follow these instructions, it's going to be an issue with her mother, because when they go back to her mother, they're told something different. She turns around, and when she turns her back towards Harold, he lifts up her dress and grabs her around her neck and drags her to her mother's room. He throws her on the bed and she starts kicking. And he holds her down. And he kept doing this. And now he's doing this. She's kicking. And somehow, someway, she finally got the grasp because Angel always had nails. She scratches his neck. And he stands up and stops dead in his tracks. And Angel says, "Now how are you going to explain it?" He gets his car keys and he leaves. Angel goes downstairs. She locks the door that leads to the downstairs. She goes in her room and she locks the room and she bawls her eyes out. She takes the dress off and vows to never dress as a girl ever again. She blames herself. Her mother still dates because she has no clue what has happened. Because Angel doesn't trust her mother anymore, because after she told her twice about Dennis and nothing happened, she figures and assumes that nobody's going to protect her. So her goal is to get out of the house. That's her goal, to get out of the house. She's back to wearing baggy clothes. Even at one point, she had long, beautiful hair, and she cut all her hair off except one long tail. And still nobody noticed. They ridiculed her and said, "Girl, you just a tomboy." And the whole time she's trying to figure out ways to not be attractive so men won't touch her. Angel's older now. It's her last year of high school. She's looking forward to a fresh start, looking forward to getting out of her hometown. And it's the night after prom, and one of Angel's friends, who is way older than her, calls and say, "Hey, come ride with me. Come take a ride with me." And despite her judgment, she goes and she gets in the car. They ride around. Just riding, just talking. Angel's in a big t-shirt, big baggy pants, just enjoying the ride, having good conversation with her friend. They park the car and are talking, having a good time, and the friend leans over and kisses her. And the friend says, "I just think you're absolutely beautiful, and I think, that regardless of whatever happened to you, you should let me show you what it feels like to be loved for real." And they lean the seat back in the car, and Angel is laying there, and in her mind she doesn't want it. But where can she go? Because you're in a car that you're not supposed to be in. You're far away from your house. What can you do? He goes and he's sucking on her breasts, and she pushes him off. And he gets upset. And he says, "You've been leading me on all this time. At least this is the least you can do." Leading you on how? We ride around, we talk. Leading you on how? I confide in you. Leading you on how? You owe me. And the only way you're gonna get back home is if you do this. You're in a car with your friend with clothes on that's 2 sizes too big. You're not supposed to be in the car. You're not close to home at all. What do you do? Angel lays back. He completely undresses her. In the first instance of penetration, Angel pushes him and says no. Regardless of the situation she's in, she says no. No. The more that she says no, the more that she pushed off, the harder he pushed in. The harder he would hold her. Once he's complete, he gets out of the car. He cleans himself up, gets back in the car, he takes her home. She walks straight to the bathroom. She sits there for a while, in pain, blaming herself. She goes outside. She removes the tracks out of the driveway. She goes back in the house. She takes a shower. She wipes herself, and there's blood in the washcloth. She goes to her room. She lays down. And succumbs to all of the pain and injuries inflicted on her. She no longer feels like a woman. She no longer trusts men. She no longer trusts anyone. She just doesn't want to be touched anymore. She doesn't want to be hurt anymore. She's in so much pain that she sleeps in a ball with a washcloth in between her legs because there's so many whelps and scars on the inside of her vagina. To the point that she got so used to sleeping that way, that's the way she sleeps, regardless. She completely died that night. She completely hated her body. Would repeatedly tell herself that she wasn't pretty as a protection. This is the death of Angel Riggins. We have finally eulogized her. But even with eulogizing her, it doesn't mean the trauma stops.